Welcome to the third event in this year's Arts and Humanities Lecture Series. This one in collaboration with the MFA program in Creative Writing. I'd like to thank Dean Costa and Associate Dean Vita Samian for helping make this possible. Also the wonderful office staffs in their office and ours for helping put it together. And I'd like to thank Jane from the bookstore for bringing all these books for us to buy. They will be there after the reading as well. I hardly feel like, and especially after this afternoon's packed house, I hardly feel like I need to introduce Li-Young Lee to this crowd, because I know so many of you have been reading his work for years, but it's been a long time since he's been to Fresno. Li-Young Lee is the author of 3 books of poems: Rose, The City in Which I Love You, and Book of My Nights, all from Boa, and he's also the author of The Winged Seed, a memoir in the form of a book-length prose poem. He's been the recipient of many literary awards: the Lannan Foundation Literary Award, the American Book Award of the Before Columbus Foundation, the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Award, among others. After the publication of his second book, a reviewer for the Harvard Book Review wrote, "He is already a major voice in American poetry," a statement that has proven even more true with each new publication. Li-Young Lee's books are among my own favorite books of poetry. I like the poems for their directness and for the way that they often surprise us with the ordinary. "Birds don't alter space," one poem says. "They reveal it. See how 3 birds in a winter tree make the tree barer?" And I especially like them for their ability to take us to the unexpected corners of our own psyches. In Book of My Nights, the opening poem includes these lines: "Night is a river bridging the speaking and listening things." There isn't an actual bridge in this image, like we'd expect to cross a river. Here, the river is the bridge, and of course, being a river, it's in perpetual motion. So the river of night stretches across the Gulf, and it also flows through, carrying us in at least 2 directions at once. I think of Lee's poems as a kind of transportation, as a way into the world of deepest human understanding, a world where the simple daily activities of cleaning and cooking and doing laundry become holy, where the dead and the lost exist along with the living, and where silence is as powerful as speech. Rather than being in 2 worlds at once, the geographical location of the poems is often motion itself, a place that might be called between. Here, language navigates between and so connects conscious and unconscious perception, love and loss, emotion and logic, song and silence. These poems ask us to look clearly at the world around us, and in doing so, ask us to look deeply into ourselves, our histories, our passions, our fears. We learn from them the possibility of acceptance, and we learn that loneliness, even loss, can be a gift. Please welcome Li-Young Lee.
Thanks, Connie. There's no way I can actually live up to that introduction, so it's all downhill from well, I'm going to try to, a few people have asked to hear some poems. I'm going to get to those, and I'd like to read some new things too. And thank you for all of you for coming out. It's a little Freudian here. I've got ink all over my hands. What, ink all over my face? Okay. I'll start with. I'll start with some requests and then move on to other things. Is this an okay level? Okay. This is a poem. This is a very early poem about braiding my wife's hair. And this was many years ago when she had very long hair down to her hips, and she has kept it short for a long time now. And the poem is also about, I think, braiding time and eternity, speech and silence, and braiding past, present, future. Do you want to come in? And it's a love poem, but also it's a poem about death. And I'll just repeat this. We talked about it this afternoon. I guess I feel bad, my wife has said, and it's true, she said the only reason you even write about me is it's an excuse to write about death. I think that all poetry is maybe it's about death, because we were talking earlier, and I was observing that all human speech is performed with the exhaled breath. As when we inhale, we are filled with life, and when we exhale, we expel life. And there's proof that when we inhale, our bodies actually get stronger, our muscles get more toned, our bones actually get impacted. And when we exhale, our bodies actually get softer. But when you write poems, so if you look at the poem like that, see the line breaks, that's a score, like a musical score for the human voice. But because it is a musical score for the human voice, and all voice is performed with the exhaled breath, all voice is possible because of the dying breath. So it's basically a score for your own dying. What is interesting and important about the exhaling breath is that meaning can only be divulged if we exhale. Because as you speak, as I'm speaking now, my meaning is getting across to you, right? I hope. So whatever it is we're trying to disclose, more and more meaning gets divulged as we speak. So that meaning grows in opposite ratio to vitality. It's a paradigm for human life. As we die, the meaning, the significance of our life gets born. But it isn't possible unless we're dying. So it's this opposite thing going on. Robert Frost has an incredible poem called West Running Brook, where in the middle of the poem becomes suddenly awake, aware of itself, and it talks about this. He calls that the tribute of the current to the source. It's a beautiful moment in the poem where he talks about the brook, and the brook, the way meaning gets made like that. I don't even know if he knew what he was talking about. But so that's my, I think that's why writing is so freighted with a kind of tragic quality, because the minute you start writing, your medium is the dying breath. And the only way to ransom that, it seems to me, is with as much love as possible, because the only thing that ransoms our going away is love, as far as I can tell. Anyway, I mentioned in here the 71 Negley, which is a bus my wife and I used to ride back and forth when we lived in Pittsburgh together. And the poem is in 6 numbered sections. I'll just say the numbers. This is called Braiding. Braiding. 1. We two sit on our bed, you between my legs, your back to me, your head slightly bowed, that I may brush and braid your hair. My father did this for my mother, just as I do for you. One hand holds the hem of your hair. The other works the brush. Both hands climb as the strokes grow longer, until I use not only my wrists, but my arms, then my shoulders, my whole body, rocking in a rower's rhythm, a lover's even time, as the tangles are undone, and brush and bare hand run the thick, fluent length of your hair, whose wintry scent comes, a faint, human musk. 2. Last night the room was so cold, I dreamed we were in Pittsburgh again, where winter persisted and we fell asleep in the last seat of the 71 Negley, dark mornings going to work. How I wish we didn't hate those years while we lived them. Those were days of books, days of silences stacked high as the ceiling of that great dim hall where we studied. I remember the thick oak tabletops, how cool they felt against my face when I lay my head down and slept. 3. How long your hair has grown. Gradually, December. 4. There will come a day, one of us will have to imagine this. You, after your bath, cross-legged on the bed, sleepy, patient, while I braid your hair. 5. Here, what's made, these braids, unmakes itself in time and must be made again, within and against time. So I braid your hair each day. My fingers gather, measure hair, hook, pull and twist hair and hair. Deft, quick, they plight, weave, articulate, lock and lock, to make and make these braids, which point the direction of my going, of all of our continuous going. And though what's made does not abide, my making is steadfast, and besides, there is a making, of which this making in time is just a part, a making which abides beyond the hands which rise in the combing, the hands which fall in the braiding, trailing hair in each stage of its unbraiding. 6. Love, how the hours accumulate, uncountable. The trees grow tall, some people walk away and diminish forever. The damp pewter days slip around without warning, and we cross over 1 year and 1 year. Maybe I'll just do one more request, and you'll have to forgive me if I don't do them all. I think I've gotten to be a better writer, so actually, maybe not, I don't know. I'm hoping that the newer poems are weaker. There's another poem about love and death. This is called This Room and Everything in It. This room and everything in it. Lie still now, while I prepare for my future. Bless you. Lie still now, while I prepare for my future. Certain hard days ahead, when I'll need what I know so clearly this moment. I am making use of the one thing I learned, of all the things my father tried to teach me, the art of memory. I am letting this room and everything in it stand for my ideas about love and its difficulties. I'll let your love cries, those spacious notes of a moment ago, stand for distance. Your scent, that scent of spice and a wound, I'll let stand for mystery. Your sunken belly is the daily cup of milk I drank as a boy before morning prayer. The sun on the face of the wall is God. The face I can't see, my soul, and so on. Each thing standing for a separate idea, and those ideas forming the constellation of my greater idea. And one day, when I need to tell myself something intelligent about love, I'll close my eyes and recall this room and everything in it. My body is estrangement. This desire, perfection. Your closed eyes, my extinction. Now I've forgotten my idea. The book on the windowsill, riffled by wind. The even-numbered pages are the past. The odd-numbered pages, the future. The sun is God. Your body is milk. Useless, useless. Your cries are song. My body's not me. No good. My idea has evaporated. Your hair is time. Your thighs are song. It had something to do with death. It had something to do with love. I'll read you some new things. When I was a kid, every morning I would come downstairs and do you want to come sit on the table? That table? When I was a kid, every morning I would come downstairs and my father would ask me, "Have you prayed?" He would ask all his kids that. And of course I lied to him, and I would say, "Yes, of course, it was really good, and I never felt guilty. I lied to him about all kinds of things. I never felt guilty. And he's been dead for 21 years, and it was about a year ago, maybe a little longer than a year ago, I was sitting in a hotel room with the window open, and the wind was blowing, and it was an unseasonably warm day in February in Philadelphia. And I was sitting looking out the window, and all of a sudden I heard my father's voice, like if he was there, like he was there. "Have you prayed?" I was so overwhelmed with guilt, I don't know what the deal was. After 21 years, I was just so smitten with it. I wanted to weep. I wanted to apologize, but I didn't know who to apologize to, And so I wrote this. And I think you'll hear as I read it that it seems really unresolved, the poem, if it is a poem. And initially I wrote it, and it was so unresolved I thought I should rewrite it, because what is it I'm trying to say? And none of the versions I rewrote were as good as this thing, where it's all over the place. So this is called "Have You Prayed?" Have you prayed? When the wind turns and asks in my Father's voice, "Have you prayed?" I know 3 things. 1, I'm not finished answering to the dead. 2, A man is 4 winds and 3 fires. And the 4 winds are his father's voice, his mother's voice, or maybe he's 7 winds and 10 fires. And the fires are seeing, hearing, touching, dreaming, thinking, or maybe he's the breath of God. When the wind turns traveler and asks, in my Father's voice, have you prayed? I remember 3 things. 1, a father's love is milk and sugar. 2/3 worry, 2/3 grief, and what's left over is trimmed and leavened to make the bread the dead and the living share. And patience, that's to endure the terrible leavening and kneading. And wisdom, that's my Father's face in sleep. When the wind asks, have you prayed? I know it's only me reminding myself a flower is one station between Earth's wish and Earth's rapture. And blood was fire, salt, and breath, long before it quickened any wand or branch, any limb that woke speaking. It's just me in the gowns of the wind, or my Father through me, asking, have you found your refuge yet? Asking, are you happy? Funny, a troubled father, a happy son, the wind with a voice, and me without one. Read this next one for Wayne. I don't know if this is the one you heard, Wayne. My son is he's been taking piano lessons with my sister for a long time, and she taught him that thing, how's it go? Every good boy deserves fudge. Every boy deserves fudge. And after a few years of that, my son asked me, Papa, is that true? Every good boy deserves fudge? And I said, no, it's not true. Every wise child is sad. And my sister heard that. She was really upset. She said, you're going to screw this kid up. So I thought about that, and I thought, well, I think it's true. Every wise child is sad. So I wrote this poem as a kind of defense of that. But I don't know if it's true, and I don't want to say that's definitive, because I don't. Ecclesiastes says it's true. The book of Ecclesiastes. So I'm not the only one who believes that. But there must be maybe a higher wisdom or a deeper wisdom that you go beyond that kind of wisdom that brings you to sadness. But I wrote this poem as a kind of just an interrogation of my own idea about that. Now, I mention in here Union Station. It's a beautiful train station in Chicago that they're thinking about tearing down now. But there's a train that comes in and out of that station called the 20th Century. So it's an amazing experience, to sit there. I sit there on the way to work in the morning, and I hear the announcement, the 20th century is about to arrive. All passengers, report to gate B. And the 20th century is about to depart. It's a really wonderful thing. So here we go. This is called Every Wise Child is Sad. As old as the stars, he's not old enough to heat his milk on the stove. Prince, and a member of the grass. He believes every wind-strewn blossom is God tearing God, and the stars are leaves blown across his grandmother's lap, or the dew multiplying. Every laughing child is forgetful. Every solitary child rules the universe. As old as night itself, that is, older than his name and his mother and father's names, yet he doesn't know what a minute weighs, or is an hour a little or a lot. But of time's many hands, he can tell the bloody from the perfumed, the feathered one with claws from the hairy one wearing rings. And he knows about the goodbyes, some of them anyway. The goodbye at the door each morning, a kiss for a kiss. The goodbye at bedtime, stories and songs until it's safe to close his eyes. And maybe he's even heard about the waiting room at Union Station, where dust and echoes climb to the great skylights, accompanied by farewells of the now-going, to join the distant farewells of the long-gone, while a voice announces the departure of the 20th century for all points west. Yes, every wise child is heartbroken, a sorrowing pip. He knows the play he's called away from each evening is all that keeps naming possible in a human household. He's sure his singing to himself and his rising and falling ball are appointed by ancient laws his own heart tides obey. But he can't tell a single other what he knows. Old enough to knot his shoelaces, but not old enough to unknot them. Old enough to pray, he doesn't always know who to pray to. Old enough to know to close the window when it storms. Old enough to know the rain, given the chance, would fall on him and darken him and darken him, the way he himself colors the figures he draws, pressing so hard he tears the page. It's not a poem for my kids. When they were little, I used to pack their lunches. And being the neurotic that I am, I was so proud of the fact that they were going to school. And I was packing these It gets better. Why are these people leaving? This is getting warmed up. Maybe they got their extra credit. This guy too. I would pack their little school lunches, you know, and I would just be grief-stricken. I didn't want them to go to school. It felt to me cruel and unkind for them to spend so many hours away from me, or me from them. And I would make them little notes I would put in their lunch. And it got very elaborate. At first it was, you know, have a nice lunch, and hope you like it. But then I started making cartoons and little books, and when they were little, it was fine. I still have these little books, little pop-ups. I mean, I spent all night gluing together pop-ups. They were quite lovely. but I would put them, in their lunches, and they really liked them. They said, "Oh, my favorite was the part of this and that," and so we had something. And then after a while, they asked me, "Well, you don't have to do that anymore, Baba." And I thought, "Oh, that's sweet. I don't mind." Then after a while, a couple more years go by. They said, "Well, please don't do that. It's kind of embarrassing." I was upset, and I noticed that that happened at the same time. I had about 100 little nicknames for them, and I would use them, frequently. And then they didn't want me to use them anymore. At first, it was just around their friends. They said, "Don't call me that in front of my friends." And then after a while, they didn't want me to call them those names at all, and so I had to write this poem to get back at them. I don't actually use any of those names. It would be too embarrassing. This is called Words for Worry. Words for worry. Another word for father is worry. Worry boils the water for tea in the middle of the night. Worry trims the child's nails before singing him to sleep. Another word for son is delight. Another word, hidden. And another is one who goes away. Yet another, one who returns. So many words for son. He dreams for all our sakes. His play vouchsafes our winter share. His dispersal wins the birds. But only one word for father. And sometimes a man is both. Which is to say, sometimes a man manifests mysteries beyond his own understanding. For instance, being the one and the many, and the loneliness of either. Or, the living light we see by, we never see. Or, the sole word weighs heavy as a various name, and sleepless worry folds the laundry for tomorrow. Tired worry wakes the child for school. Orphan worry writes the note he hides in the child's lunch bag. It begins, "Dear Firefly." One more father poem. Now here's a poem about from childhood. This is, I think it's about the experience of that kind of special solitude in childhood that we sometimes are overwhelmed and terrified by and enriched by. This is called Degrees of Blue. Degrees of Blue. At the place in the story where a knock at the hull wakes the dreamer, and he opens his eyes to find the rowers gone, the boat tied to an empty dock. The boy looks up from his book, out the window, and sees the hills have turned their backs. They are walking into evening. How long does he watch them go? Does the part of him that follows them call for years across his growing sadness? When he returns to the tale, the page is dark, and the leaves at the window have been traveling beside his silent reading as long as he can remember. Where is his father? When will his mother be home? How is he going to explain the moon taken hostage, the sea risen to fill up all the mirrors? How is he going to explain the branches beginning to grow from his ribs and throat, the cries and trills starting in his own mouth? And now that ancient sorrow between his hips, his body's right listening, the planet knowing itself at last. It's so quiet. You'll fall asleep. I don't. I'll read 3 more poems. This is a love poem from my mother. This was actually a birthday poem from my mother that I haven't had the courage to read to her yet. I tried to write a birthday poem for her once, and she doesn't speak English. She speaks 6 or 7 other languages, but none of them English. And it was her 70th birthday. I decided I should write a poem for her. So I wrote a poem. I read it to her in English, and I translated it into Chinese. And she sat and nodded for a while. Then she put her hand on my face, and she said, "You pitiful thing." I don't know whether whether she was saying, "Oh, that poem is such a deep feeling, I pity you," or "That's so terrible." But anyway, I think she wanted me to write another one, so I wrote this one. And I'm going to read it to her maybe when she turns 100. She's so great. She carried me back and forth to school when I was little, to kindergarten. We cut a deal. I said I wouldn't go. I refused to go. And she said, "How about I carry you?" I said, "Will you carry me back?" She said, "Done." And I said, "Okay." And I said, if you put me down, I won't go. And she said, "Okay." So she carried me back and forth. And, until one day I had my face against her neck and I realized she was running a fever. I was about 9 at the time. When we came to this country, I didn't speak any English, so my parents kept us out of school. They didn't think we were going to stay here long. And when I finally went to kindergarten, it was already pretty late. So I was as tall as she was. She was carrying me, and it's shameful, I know. And to this day, she carries me. I think our mothers carry us. I think that's what mothers are. I think mothers and fathers are here to carry us. I have kids, so I know I am here to carry my kids. So this is a poem in honor of her. This is called The Hammock. The Hammock. When I lay my head in my mother's lap, I think how day hides the stars, the way I lay hidden once, waiting inside my mother's singing to herself. And I remember how she carried me on her back between home and the kindergarten, once each morning and once each afternoon. I don't know what my mother's thinking. When my son lays his head in my lap, I wonder, do his father's kisses keep his father's worries from becoming his? I think, dear God, and remember, there are stars we haven't heard from yet. They have so far to arrive. Amen, I think. And I feel almost comforted. I have no idea what my child is thinking. Between two unknowns, I live my life. Between my mother's hopes, older than I am by coming before me, and my child's wishes, older than I am by outliving me. And what's it like?
Is it a door and goodbye on either side? A window and eternity on either side? Yes, and a little singing between two great rests. Here's another poem I'm working on. I'll read two more poems. This is called Poor Shadow. I don't know what's wrong with it. If you know, you tell me. But be kind. Poor Shadow. My shadow is trying to decide if the universe is a flowering tree or the sleep of a woman who carries, without her knowing it yet, the word at the end of the story of time. Me, I'm just waiting for evening. Then I'll know what I feel. My shadow, though, is troubled. It wants to know the word the woman will speak upon waking. It wonders, does time blossom, ripen, or branch in two directions, seen and unseen? And what is flesh? Perfume? Some pollen? The very sap? Me, I don't care about that. I'm waiting for the playground to empty. Then I can call out the stations of the moon, the open book, the trumpet entombed, the silent answer. Me, I'm waiting for the leaves to travel. Then I can trade places with the wind. Then I'll remember that old story beginning with the great herds of stars at pasture. Meanwhile, my shadow grows more desperate every minute, asking, in which room of the sleepless clock do our clothes lie folded for the final journey? My shadow is crying, the bread that wakes in a house that fails. What table fathered it? It's protesting. The pillow awaiting your head is just so much cloud. Poor shadow. While I sleep, it will sit at the window all night thinking, dear shadow, may you hear the singing that entrances, the seed of each fruit born falling, a singing without issue, become becoming. Read you one more short poem. Thank you very much for your generous attention and for being so quiet. This is called Little Father. Little Father. I buried my father in the sky. Since then, the birds clean and comb him every morning and pull the blanket up to his chin every night. I buried my father underground. Since then, my ladders climb only down, and all the earth has become a house, whose rooms are the hours, whose doors stand open at evening, receiving guest after guest. Sometimes I see past them to the tables spread for a wedding feast. I buried my father in my heart. Now he grows in me, my strange son, my little root who won't drink milk, little pale foot sunk in unheard of night, little clock spring newly wet in the fire, little grape, parent to the future wine, a son the fruit of his own son, little father I ransom with my life. Thank you very much.